It was a quiet evening in Johannesburg, August 5th, 1962. The streets whispered under curfew. Headlights sliced through the mist, and the tension of a divided nation lingered in the air. Nelson Mandela, then 44, was no longer just a man. He was a symbol, the leader of Umkhonto we Sizwe, the armed wing of the ANC, a fugitive who had spent months in hiding. That night, his disguise as a chauffeur failed him. Police, tipped off by informants, stopped his car on a lonely road near Howick. Without resistance, he was arrested. No gunfire, no shouting, just silence. The kind of silence that ends one life and begins another. Behind bars, the weight of history began to press down. Mandela's imprisonment at Robben Island became a slow crucible of transformation, from rebel to revolutionary, from husband to myth. But what few understood was that as his legend grew, something deeply human was breaking apart. Behind the bars, he carried the image of his wife, Winnie Mandela, a woman he loved, trusted, and believed in. Yet time, distance, and politics would turn that love into one of the greatest emotional tragedies of the 20th century. Winnie, left behind in Soweto with 2 young daughters, faced her own prison, one without walls. Banned, harassed, and watched, she became the living symbol of resistance. She was young, fierce, and unbreakable, the mother of a nation. But with admiration came danger. The government sought to destroy her spirit through isolation, raids, and propaganda. Still, Winnie didn't break. Instead, she became more radical, more defiant, and more powerful. Yet, with power came whispers, and whispers have a way of reaching even the thickest prison walls. Before Winnie, there was Evelyn Mays, Mandela's first wife, a nurse and quiet believer in faith over politics. Their marriage collapsed under the weight of activism, arrests, and exile. Evelyn wanted peace. Nelson wanted revolution. So when he met Winnie in 1957, it was as if the storm itself had introduced them. She was 21, elegant, educated, and burning with conviction. He was 39, seasoned, magnetic, and already hunted by the state. Their connection was instant. Winnie admired his courage, his moral fire. Mandela admired her fearlessness in a world designed to silence women. They didn't just fall in love. They found in each other a reflection of purpose. Their marriage in 1958 symbolized hope, a union between heart and revolution. They were more than husband and wife. They were a movement wrapped in 2 bodies. But movements demand sacrifice, and soon love became collateral. Within 4 short years, Mandela was gone, swallowed by the apartheid regime. Winnie was left to raise 2 daughters and a dream that refused to die. While Mandela endured the brutality of Robben Island, the cold floors, the blinding limestone, the endless days of labor, Winnie became both his voice and his myth. She spoke for him in rallies and interviews, in whispers across townships. But loneliness has a sound, a quiet hum that fills the soul when letters replace touch and memory becomes the only company. In the 1970s and 80s, as Mandela's imprisonment stretched into decades, Winnie's fame soared. She commanded fear and respect. Her words were fire. But even fire can burn what it means to protect. Whispers of other relationships began to surface. Rumors of emotional entanglements. Most notably, a young lawyer named Dali Mpofu. It was a story the world wasn't ready for. The idea that the symbol of African resistance, the face of endurance, might also be a woman torn between love, loneliness, and rebellion. By 1990, Mandela walked free, a global icon reborn. The world wept. South Africa held its breath. But freedom, after 27 years, came with ghosts. He stepped into a new world. Cameras flashing, nations cheering. Yet behind that radiant smile, one question haunted him. What had become the woman he loved? Their reunion was emotional, public, and powerful. Yet behind the closed doors of their home, silence reigned. Mandela, ever disciplined in private, sensed a distance that felt colder than prison walls. Winnie had changed, shaped by survival, scarred by isolation. And then came the letter. Dated March 1992, leaked later that year. It exposed Winnie's correspondence with Dali Mpofu, intimate, emotional, and financially entangled. She spoke of loneliness, of love, of betrayal. She confessed to sending him money, to feeling abandoned. The press devoured it. Mandela, who had forgiven prison guards, spies, and even his enemies, could not forgive this. He said later that the letter confirmed what his heart already knew, that their marriage had become a battlefield of its own. To him, betrayal wasn't just about love. It was about truth. The one person who was meant to protect his heart had, in his eyes, broken it. In April 1992, Mandela announced their separation. The following years were marked by dignity and restraint. No public accusations, no scandalous interviews, only quiet heartbreak. By 1996, the divorce was finalized. Mandela would later tell close friends that he had forgiven her politically, but not personally. He could reconcile with his oppressors, but not with a wound born in intimacy. After the divorce, their paths diverged like rivers that once shared the same source. Mandela found peace with Graham Marshall, whom he married in 1998, a gentle companionship built on shared ideals and calm affection. It was a love of healing, not passion, one that restored balance after years of sacrifice. Winnie, on the other hand, continued to fight for power, for recognition, for redemption. She became both revered and condemned. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission exposed her connection to violence, particularly through the Mandela United Football Club, accused of acts of brutality. In 1997, standing before Archbishop Desmond Tutu, she said, "Things went horribly wrong." It was not an excuse. It was an admission of the chaos that had consumed her. Yet despite scandal and scrutiny, Winnie remained defiant, unrepentant in her love for Mandela and her role in South Africa's liberation. To many, she was a true revolutionary, unpolished, untamed, unapologetically African. To others, she was a tragic figure, a symbol of how power, isolation, and grief can corrode even the purest intentions. When Nelson Mandela passed in 2013, tributes flooded the world. Presidents, poets, and peasants mourned him alike. When Winnie died 5 years later, crowds filled the streets of Soweto chanting her name, as if history itself had decided to forgive her, even if he never could. So, why did Nelson Mandela never forgive Winnie? Perhaps because forgiveness for him was sacred, reserved for the oppressor, not for the one who shared his soul. He had built his life around principles, justice, integrity, loyalty. But betrayal from within, that was different. To forgive Winnie would mean to rewrite the deepest chapter of his pain. Their story is not one of villains and saints, but of two people swallowed by history's demands. They were warriors, lovers, icons, but also human. And humans break where ideals cannot. In his later years, Mandela often spoke of peace. Not the peace of treaties or applause, but the peace within. Yet in private, friends noted that he rarely spoke Winnie's name. The wound remained quiet, dignified, unresolved. Because sometimes forgiveness isn't denial, it's distance. And sometimes, even the greatest hearts cannot mend what time and power have torn apart. Nelson and Winnie's love began as a flame that defied an empire, but ended as ashes scattered across freedom's altar. He forgave the world.